Hey, I'm here to talk about the Mercury retrograde from Aquarius to Capricorn on February 6th through the 27th. This is going to be a time where, based on the speed of Mercury and the proximity of it to the Earth, Mercury will appear to be moving backwards. And when this happens, things such as communications and other kinds of technologies and things like that, and our relations with certain kinds of peer groups and whatnot will tend to back up in our life. So you want to try to get your information systems together and make sure that what you're communicating with people is clear before Mercury goes retrograde, because what happens is wherever we are on the kind of sloppiness cycle relative to what the planet rules, both in a general sense and in our chart, we sort of have to deal with that when the planet goes retrograde. So, for instance, if someone is a Gemini or Virgo, it'll affect them a little more because that's their ruling planet, which means their whole kind of nature revolves around that planet. So for those people, Mercury retrograde is always a little more, I wouldn't say, disruptive, but it certainly can be. Now, I like to be neutral about these things because the truth of the matter is retrograde planets have enormous upside potential if we're willing to be introspective and we're willing to reflect on things. Mercury, as far as frequency, goes retrograde more than other planets because it's the closest to the Sun and it's fastest moving. So its speed relative to the Earth's speed is, is quite different. The truth of the matter is, as far as sheer time is concerned, Saturn is retrograde almost half the time. So when people say Mercury goes retrograde all the time, the planet that's retrograde the most that we can see is Saturn. He's retrograde almost for 5 months out of the year straight. Mercury's retrograde 3 times a year, usually for about 3 weeks, but the frequency is more often. And what this means is that, Mercury rules the function of speech, intelligence, information gathering, our kind of stimulated, energy with the world. So, for instance, if we're scattered and we're doing too many things, this is why Mercury retrograde creates problems, because it means we're not paying attention to the 3 or 4 most important things. Like if we're just like, oh, I'll come back and, clean up my hard drive later, but, I need to watch, I can't even think of a television show because I don't watch TV, but, I need to watch some TV show. So I'll just do this later. Well, this isn't a good allocation of our attention. Or if we're spread too thin, this is what makes things break down in Mercury retrograde cycles. Not to mention, more importantly, more tangibly, our literal communication. It's good that we slow down and think before we speak. And so, again, Mercury is where we're often speaking very indiscriminately. We're not flexible, we're not open to what other people say, and we don't adjust. This is the greatness of Mercury, and if we're not doing that very well, and we're just kind of reacting and speaking and communicating things, whether it's through our voice or just in our life, then Mercury retrograde problems become revealed at the time when then those problems become revealed when Mercury goes retrograde. We start to pay the price and suffer the consequences for those situations in our life that have deteriorated due to our poor communication, which, as I said, generally comes from Mercury moving too fast, from us reacting rather than thinking and reflecting. It's good that we reflect on what we say. It's good that we wait a little bit and make sure that we've understood the other person first before we speak. For instance, Mercury moving forward, which is external, is very much related to the function of speech. It comes out of us. Mercury retrograde is very much about internal. Retrograde planets are internalized. And what's the internal quality of communication? It's called listening. Duh. So if we're not a good listener and we just kind of blather what we have to say all the time, we may get the kind of blowback from that when Mercury goes retrograde. And what's it going to do? It's going to compel us to listen more closely if we're smart and we get the message. Again, this is the point. There's never a reason to say, oh, this was bad. And it's not just because I want to put a smiley face on things. If I just said, well, just do your best, it's not bad, everything has a challenge. This is the specific part of Mercury retrograde that is so important, is the faculty of listening. people who are good listeners and who pay attention. And I also mean listening to what your environment is telling you. Like, for instance, if you have your hard drive and you've heard it a million times that you should back things up and you should clean up your hard drive and you shouldn't, let's say, visit, porn sites where there's malware, whatever, things where your attention is not being, focused in the proper way. We've all heard this, but have we actually listened to it? All of these things can corrupt your hard drive and your systems. And if you're like, I know all about that, but I need to go do this, again, that's not listening and hearing the message. Listening is called Shravana. Sacred listening is called Shravana, hearing. And it's actually, this is one of the nakshatras, and it's ruled by Lord Vishnu, who is the incarnation of Mercury. So listening and Shravana, which is really hearing the truth, is an important part of Mercury energy. Communication is not just what we want to say, it's what others say also. And it's not just other people, but everything around us is telling us something. That house that you haven't cleaned up is telling you, clean me up, because it's not just the dirt. It's not just that you're too busy to clean up your house, it's that you're overlooking details. I say this to myself. I mean, if you saw the room I'm standing in, you'd see it needs to be cleaned up. Because, I'm paying attention to other things. So again, this also has to do with like your diet. Clean that up. Your exercise routine. Clean that up. Again, this is what Mercury does. Mercury is the part of us that notices what's not right, can see, I should be doing that. Yes, I've heard, I know this is the right thing, but we don't actually do it. It stays in our head, and it doesn't become something that we actually, put into practice. So this is an important thing. Mercury retrogrades are always important. And again, on the literal sense, make sure to look at your information systems and stuff like that, and make sure that, if you can, between now and then, between now and February 6th, hopefully you have some things cleaned up, or you have time to take care of these things, because when Mercury goes retrograde, it is going to tend to back up. I know a lot of people say don't sign contracts and all this stuff, or start new projects. I don't advocate that at all. I've done many stuff. I've released my books. I don't consider Mercury retrograde in that way at all, as a counter deterrent. There's always good times to find things. People have all of their dreams fulfilled when Mercury retrograde cycles happen as well. It doesn't deter those things. It might not be the best thing to do, but if you have to do something like that in Mercury's retrograde, don't let it stop you, is what I'm saying. Other things are much more important as far as selecting auspicious times and finding, a good, what's called muhurta, than Mercury retrograde. This is like the kind of lazy astrologer approach to finding auspicious times. Well, I don't want to do it when Mercury's retrograde. I mean, Saturn retrograde, which is about half the time, is just as much, or the Sun in the southern course is, there's all kinds of things that are much more high leverage than just Mercury being retrograde. If it's retrograde and it's in an angle and it rules a trine, it's very powerful Raj Yoga if it's joined other planets. So, depends on what you're doing. So, I don't talk about any specific kind of things to not do. I don't recommend people not, live their life. If you're sophisticated enough to be selecting auspicious muhurtas and auspicious times to do things, you would know that. I'm saying this to kind of counter this sort of, hack astrology approach to, well, I can't do this now because Mercury's retrograde. That's not true. You can, so I think I made the point. But I hope this was helpful for you. Share it and, get those details cleaned up and get ready for some nice introspective Mercury retrograde time where you can reflect on what you communicate, reflect on how well you listen, and reflect on how you might need to make some adjustments and do those things a little bit better.